problem. We got you. Okay. So I think we're good to begin. So welcome everybody to the meeting of Central Plymouth County Water District Commission, Tuesday, November 30th, about 12:02 p.m. The meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance with the government order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20. Questions and comments from those on the meeting today can be provided through the chat or Q&A features on Zoom. You can also raise your hand and we'll unmute you to speak. For those joining by phone, press *9 if you'd like to raise your hand. All votes will be done by roll call to ensure count accuracy. The meeting is being recorded as well, so please keep that in mind. And we'll just do a quick roll call and then we'll begin. So I'm Joanne Zygmunt, I'm the chair and I'm here. Jack O'Leary.
Present.
And Mark Sotier.
Also present.
Excellent, thank you. Right, so we're going to start with the monitoring project that's happening at Silver Lake. Last name, Ladwig?
That's correct, yes.
Ladwig. So we've got Matt Ladwig from ESS Group joining us, and also Kimberly Groff, who is a consultant to the commission, helping us with project management. So at this point, Matt, I think I'm going to kick it over to you. I know there's a bunch of things that we need to cover, so wherever you want to start.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so that we can just kind of follow along. I might need Joanne to enable that.
Oh, sorry. Let me do that now. Does that work?
Yes, thank you very much.
Very welcome.
Okay. So before we jump into some of the results, I just wanted to provide the commission with an overview of our program progress to date. It's been a couple of months since we were able to check in. So I thought I'd put the project detail back up that we started the program under and just kind of walk you through where we're at. So everybody should be familiar with the administration and reporting task. This is our 4th meeting that we've attended as a status update meeting. We did complete the project kickoff and project detail early on in the project. Under the SAP and QAP tasks, we did submit a draft SAP and do an initial revision to the SAP based on comments received from the commission. And then, of course, the SAP was presented at the August meeting. And we had a comment period that I don't remember when it originally ran to, I think it was August, but that was extended to the end of September at that meeting. So we got all comments in by September 30th on the SAP. So I've added kind of a grayed out code here that just means that that was a either an event or deliverable that was planned originally for that time period, and it's been kind of pushed. So you can see our finalization of the SAP has been pushed out to now. So here we are in late November. And then following on the SAP, we were in development of a QAP, and we have something pretty far along the way, but I think before we have that reviewed, we would recommend finalizing the SAP so that we can advance the QAP and get that submitted to EPA. And I'll touch on these things a little bit later on in our presentation as well. One other thing that sort of got pushed was the draft and final launch informational leaflet. I think we'll come back to this as well, but these had been originally envisioned in the scope of work as something that would go out at the beginning and the end of the project, but we haven't developed anything there to date. So I've just sort of grayed that out for now. So really focusing on our progress, most of that has been here in task 4, which is the SAP implementation. So as you know, we did get out and start the field program in early September. We completed our bathymetric, aquatic plant, and benthic surveys at that time. And since then, we've completed 3 in-lake water column and water quality sampling events. We actually have another one scheduled for early December. As part of those in-lake water column and water quality sampling events, we did add on the bacteria testing at the request of the commission. So we've done 3 events for that at this point. The cyanotoxin testing has not been done yet. And again, we'll touch on this later in the conversation, but that was really a task that was contingent on diversion activity. So one of the things we'll be discussing today is any updates on where we stand with the diversions. I know this has been a very unusual weather year. So we've had more flooding issues than probably water demand issues. And then lastly, our upstream and downstream monitoring. So this is the tributaries and the outlet sampling for Silver Lake. We have completed 2 of those events. The first one, we didn't have enough time in September to really get that all set up and established. We were still sort of reconning the best locations to put our loggers in at the sites, but we were able to eventually find suitable locations. We actually also had 2 dry stream channels. Well, they weren't dry, they were wet, but they weren't flowing in September. So that's normally not a situation where we would do sampling anyway. So we did start the sampling in October. We had water in all the streams, and we were able to set up our loggers in those locations. So we've done 2 of those events to date. And as you can see, we've got another upstream and downstream monitoring event currently programmed for December, hopefully early in the month. And hopefully the weather will be accommodating for all of our activities there. So now that I've kind of given you an overview of where we're at in the schedule, let me just share a couple of selected results I thought the commission might be interested to see. We have a lot more than this already, but these are just things I thought might be of interest for this brief update in this meeting. Here, what you're looking at is dissolved oxygen profiles. So the top of these graphs is the surface of Silver Lake, and the bottom of the graphs is the bottom of the lake. And you can see this goes down pretty deep. So this is more than 20 meters. So we're roughly around 70 feet deep here. So this is the deep hole site in Silver Lake. At the upper left-hand corner, we have the September 7th sampling event. Then we have another one here in the middle, October 1st, and then November 1st and November 9th. We actually went back twice in November. So the reason I put this up here is because it is a very nice illustration of the seasonal progression in this dissolved oxygen profile. You can see here on September 7th, this blue line is the dissolved oxygen. The red line is the temperature profile. We have lots of dissolved oxygen at the surface of the lake here in early September. And then as we move down the water column, right around 7-8 meters deep, we basically go to 0 on the dissolved oxygen. So we're anoxic from this point down. And that corresponds largely with the water temperature here. So we've got a nice warm epilimnion here at the surface of the lake and a cold hypolimnion at the bottom of the lake. And there's really not a lot of mixing probably going on, which is why we have dissolved oxygen here, but not down here at the bottom of the lake. Moving into October, you can see we've got a little bit more oxygen, a little bit farther down. So the water's starting to cool and maybe mix a little deeper, but still it's really stratified. So we still have this warm layer on top with lots of oxygen and a cooler layer on the bottom without very much oxygen at all. And then by early November, we see that most of that hypolimnion is now well oxygenated. So we're going down to 17, 18 meters here, where we have a decent amount of dissolved oxygen in the water. So much of the lake is probably mixed at this point, including a lot of the shallower spots. But here at the deep hole, we still have some areas in the deepest waters that have very low dissolved oxygen. But as you can see here on the right, our temperature profile is almost straight down. So this indicates that the water is really well mixed, and we just have a little bit of cool water here still at the very, very bottom of Silver Lake. And this changes very quickly. So a week later, November 9th, we're basically straight lines up and down. So the whole lake is essentially turned over here, and will be in some form of this for most of the winter, barring any ice cover that we get. So I just kind of wanted to show that we are seeing a progression here. We did get out and do a sampling event early enough that we were able to see this big difference between the conditions that would be more typical of summertime condition and conditions that will be more typical of winter here, as represented by the November 9th graph. I also wanted to share, I think another major component of our study here was the invasive plant mapping. And we suspected there were aquatic invasive plants, but we didn't really know how many species and where they were in the lake. So what I'm showing here is actually a composite map of all the aquatic invasive species that we found in the lake. So these little stars are variable leaf milfoil. The points are Eurasian milfoil, and the squares are fanwort. So each of these is a different species. And then the different colors represent different densities. So green is the lowest density. Basically, we found some of the plant, but it wasn't dominant. And red is where that plant is doing really well and is basically dominating the aquatic plant community. And the colors in between are sort of, low to moderate densities. So as you can see on this map, and we have it overlaid here on the Kohler and Colantonio bathymetry, we're still working on ours from 2003. You can see most of the plant growth is occurring in shallow portions of Silver Lake, down to about 15, maybe 20 feet. But it is occurring pretty much around the entire perimeter. So there's really no gaps here, significant gaps here where there isn't some sort of aquatic plant growth. The Eurasian milfoil is definitely the most widely distributed. So you'll see lots of these little round points here. That's very well distributed throughout the lake. Fanwort is also fairly well distributed, although at much lower densities at this point. So these squares are fanwort cover. And then one of the plants that looks like it maybe just moved in or is not, maybe it's been there for a while, but is not doing very well, is variable leaf milfoil. The points for Eurasian milfoil. Variable leaf milfoil has, it looks like it may have just recently moved in or is just not taking to the lake because we found this really just at the northern extreme of the lake and up here in Tubbs Meadow Brook. I guess one thing to really note here is Tubbs Meadow Brook, which we ventured into with the boat because it's deep enough to here, actually has all three of these plants. So there's a very good chance, although we can't necessarily prove it, that the plants are being sourced from Tubbs Meadow Brook and anything that feeds into that. There could be other sources as well. There could have been other introductions, but the fact that they're up there suggests that that may be a source for these plants. So just something to keep an eye on. One thing we may see in the spring is there's some plant species that have a very early, they complete their life cycle very early in the season. Curly leaf pondweed is the main example that comes to mind. So that would not have really been up in force when we went out and did our plant surveys in September. Obviously, if we see it in the spring when we go back out, we'll make notes of where it is and add that to the map. So that's just something else to keep an eye out for. There could be additional species here, but these are the three that we documented. I think that really does it for the information that I had to share on our results to date. As I mentioned, we didn't really do any diversion sampling yet. So one thing to think about there is if there are diversions going on currently or over the course of the winter, it's something where we may want to consider reallocating some of the sampling effort to capture those. Otherwise, we'll just continue monitoring the situation and save the effort for periods of active diversion if they occur during the rest of the study period. Any questions or comments on the field program progress to date before I move on to the next agenda item?
No, it looks, it's very well presented, Matt. I appreciate that.
Sure thing. And obviously this is just a little slice of what we're finding. I could go into exhaustive detail on lots of other things as well, but I think
I
these
did
were,
have a question on, I guess, not that familiar with limnology, but how the turnover you're seeing, is that something that is typical in a pond like this that's at least believe it's groundwater fed?
yeah, the seasonal setup of the lake where you have that thermal stratification during the summertime with the warm water on top and the cool on the bottom.
Mhm.
That's very normal for lakes in our area, deep lakes especially.
Okay,
And this was considered a deep lake. And then the timing of the turnover really depends a lot on the weather. So
yeah.
if you have a cool windy fall, you'll have an earlier turnover than if you have a lot of sunny, warm days without a lot of wind.
But the lack of oxygen in the summer at the deeper levels, is that something that's normal? I'm just thinking that you would think the groundwater would, if it wasn't groundwater fed, I would expect that, but groundwater fed, that mechanism ought to be putting some fresher water and causing some degree of stirring, I would think.
Yeah, the dissolved oxygen dynamics at the bottom of the lake really have more to do with how much biology is down in that portion of the lake and respiring. So,
Mhm.
all of us breathe, and a
Right.
lot of microorganisms do as well. So if you have a lot of biomass that's at the bottom of the lake, it's going to be respiring the whole time. There's only so much dissolved oxygen that's down there. And during the summertime, what happens when you don't have the mixing all the way to the bottom,
Mhm.
and that bottom portion of the lake gets separated from the top, the only source of oxygen is really what's there already. And so it gets used up over time by the organisms that are living there. So
Okay.
in a lake where you had very low productivity, you might expect to see pretty good dissolved oxygen all the way down to the bottom. Even over the course of the summer into the late summer, you'd see some eventual erosion of that dissolved oxygen, but you might not go anoxic. In a lake that's a little bit more advanced along the way and where you have more productivity, which is algae and plant growth and other things that come into the lake or are growing in the lake and dying there, you'll lose that oxygen at a faster rate.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly the point I was going to make, is that there's some biology going on, whether it's living or dead down there, that's using up the oxygen.
Right.
And that's overcoming any natural replenishment of the oxygen from the groundwater, if there is any.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I guess the thing is that you see it in the summertime a lot, and late summer especially, because there isn't really a lot of other ways for oxygen to exchange into that part of the lake.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Any other questions?
Anything from you?
Okay, great.
Any of
So
the attendees? Nope. Nope. Go ahead, Matt. It doesn't look like anybody's got anything.
okay, great, thank you. So I think the second item on our little mini agenda here was going back to the revised SAP and just kind of giving you an update on what we've done there. So since the public comment period closed, we really just sort of put all those public comments together into an appendix that can be attached to the end of the SAP. We also have the ability to add a summary table there that just sort of goes through who the commenters were when they submitted their comments, whether they were verbal or written comments, and then sort of categorizes the kind of comment and gives a very brief overview of what it was. So if that's something that the commission thinks would be helpful to have in the SAP, it's something that we can easily add and then actually still preserve the full comments in the appendix so that anybody who's looking through it would be able to see both our summary as well as the full comment at the end. I think that's really, the main change that we made. There are other minor revisions that could be made or other things that could be contemplated that we might want to think about changing for the 2022 field program. But I think at this point, because we're so far along in the study, the SAP has basically kind of guided what we've done to now. I would recommend that we consider finalizing the SAP where it is, and then handling any of the adjustments we want to make either in the QAP or if we want to revise the SAP at a later time, we can come back and sort of amend it to accommodate any changes we want to make to the field program going forward. But for now, I think it actually is a pretty accurate representation of what we ended up doing this fall. So that would be my recommendation. And I don't know, Kim, did you want to add anything on that?
Well, we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but I know that the next thing that you wanted to talk about was the QAP, trying to button that up. And I guess, is there anything that you can see at this stage that would change the methodology of what's documented in the QAP to date moving forward that we should be thinking about? Do you think we've captured every, method and analysis that we either plan now to do or might consider doing in the future? Because the only reason I bring this up is, you just want to do the QAP once.
Right.
You wouldn't want to amend the QAP. So I apologize, we didn't get a chance to talk about that before the meeting.
I think, what we could do, I know there's a couple of optional items that we had in our contract or in the proposal that we wrote to do some sediment sampling. I think that could be included into the QAP. We could leave it broad enough that we could incorporate any of the relevant takeaways from some of the comments that we received on the SAP, which I think there were some very good comments that we should consider for next year. But I think the QAP would be written to be broad enough to cover all of that, while also providing specifics on the methods that we would be using. I think the big changes would be maybe we would add an additional something here or do, more sampling events. And that's all stuff that, the QAP is basically a plan for what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and how we're going to assure that we're collecting quality data. But if we want to do more, as long as we're following the methods that we laid out in the QAP, I think we can definitely do that. So that's kind of how we've been writing the QAP. So there's enough flexibility there to incorporate anything that we want to do going forward.
Yeah, so it'd be, if anything, it's not changing anything that we would do, but maybe potentially doing more data collection using all the same methods. That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and I think one of the maybe more relevant comments that came in was about adding maybe additional loggers in the lake or different kinds of loggers. And I think as long as we have a general approach to how we're handling the deployment and collection of logger data, I think we could apply that to anything that we want to put out there, really. So those are my thoughts on that.
So the decision that you need from us, Matt, now is whether or not to approve the SAP and then how we want to move forward with the QAP.
Yes, so for the SAP, I guess the question would be, would the commission want to approve the SAP as final with the changes that I just mentioned being really the only substantive changes to that document? So that would be adding the appendix with the public comments. And then if the commission desired to see it, adding a summary table with those comments in it that would actually go into the narrative of the SAP and then be sort of like the last section of the SAP.
I think, so from my point of view, I think that I would like to see that summary table in the SAP and the appendix. And then I would feel comfortable approving it because it's not like, I think as you say, the comments are about adding things, not necessarily changing any of the fundamental things that are already proposed. So if we could then make additions on a final SAP by making a few amendments next year, I think that would be okay with me. But what do the other commissioners think?
This is Mark, Joanne. I agree with you.
This is Jack. I agree as well.
Yeah. Okay, there you go, Matt. So do we need a formal vote on that at all to, yeah, probably just to approve the SAP as it stands, or do you guys want to see that again before you vote on it with those public comment changes incorporated into the document?
I don't need to see it again.
No.
So if I could, Chair, one more time,
Mhm.
I'm sorry to, but it's approving the motion, which I need someone to make the motion, and then a second, would be to approve the SAP, adding public comments and a summary table. Is that correct?
So a summary of the public comments as well as all the comments in an appendix.
Okay, great. Thank you. I got that.
And does anybody have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor? Joanne, aye.
Jack, I.
Mark, aye.
And
Super.
I assume Commissioner
Mhm.
Soter, you seconded it, right?
I
Oh,
didn't have a
sorry
chance to,
about
but I
that.
do second it, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. All right. Anything else on the staff, Matt? So we're good on that now?
I think we're good on the SAP. We can move on to the QAP if that makes
Go
sense.
for it.
All right, so we kind of already touched on it, but basically, I think taking the direction from the commission today and what we know already about what we've approved in the SAP and leaving the QAP broad enough that we can incorporate any changes to the field program that may occur next year. I think ESS is ready to move forward with issuing the draft QAP. And our understanding is that Kim would do the initial review and comment on that, and then we would come back to the commission with a revised, internally revised QAP for your review and comment. And then we would then take that and send that to EPA for their approval. And just as a reminder, the commission, EPA's lead time on those reviews is a minimum of 30 days, really. So we should, whenever we actually get the approval to submit to EPA for their review, we should anticipate at least a month before they can get back to us with their comments. And because of the funding source here, EPA won't actually do a formal approval. What they'll do is they'll provide their comments back to us and indicate that if we make those changes, the QAP would be approvable by EPA, but it won't be formally approved because it's not funded with federal monies.
So what would the timeline look like on that, Matt? Would you have that ready within the next month, and then Kim would need, I'm imagining, a couple weeks? So would the commission be able to review that for maybe like an end of January meeting?
Yeah, I'm thinking that we could have something to Kim in early December, which was tomorrow, really, but first half of December. And then Kim, I guess, depending on when we actually get it to you, you'll probably have a better idea for how significant any changes need to be and how much review time you'll need. And then I think we could probably look at submitting to EPA in January at some point. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and Bernadette just raised a question in the chat about whether we'd be submitting to DEP, the QAP. At DEP, if they like to see a QAP, if they intend to use the data for water quality assessment purposes. And I believe that DEP did signal that they would be interested in the data for their program. So they typically would require a QAP in order to receive data that's collected, by a third party external to the department. So it probably makes sense, since we're going through the effort to submit it to EPA, to also submit it to DEP.
And how do you think that would affect the time? So this would go to DEP before it goes to EPA.
No, they could be done in parallel. It could. I just did one where we sent it to both agencies for review, and EPA actually turned it around in 30 days, and DP was a little bit longer, but they try to turn it around in 30 days as well.
Original project plan, the QAP doesn't undergo the public participation. That's what the STOP process was for, which feeds into the QAP. Is that correct? No? Yes. Okay. That sounds good. So Matt, the decision you need from us is what today?
I guess if it's okay to submit a draft version of the QAP to Kim for her review, and that will start the process.
Jack, Mark, what do you guys think?
I'm good with that.
I'm good with it. It sounds like the process it has to go pretty well for it to meet that time frame.
Yeah, it seems tight.
Is EPA really
But-
doing things in 30 days? Actually,
It depends on what's on their plate.
okay,
They try to turn it around in 30 days, but it
okay.
doesn't always happen that way.
All right. Well, I'm fine with it as long with the we just have to understand that the timeframes may not actually happen.
Yeah. And I'm also conscious of the holidays coming up as well, too, for lots of different folks. So I think we just leave it open to Matt and Kim, and whenever they're able to turn it around for us to review. Our next meeting, I believe, is scheduled. We've got one at the end of December. I think we're still meeting monthly, one at the end of December and one at the end of January. So probably we'd be looking at the end of January, but we can always move that up potentially if we feel like the QAP is ready for the commission to review sooner than that.
Chair, I don't have a
Mhm.
meeting scheduled in January as of yet. My notes show that the last one we scheduled on this rotation was going to be Tuesday.
December 28th.
Yeah, Tuesday, December 28th at noon time, Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the last meeting I have scheduled. So I just need dates for going forward after that December 28th meeting.
Okay. While we're on that, Mark and Jack, would January, we can pencil in same time, same schedule for January? And then if we need to move it forward, we can try and do that. Does that work for you guys? So it'd be January 25 at noon?
That would be fine for me.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor? Joanne, aye?
We need a second.
Oh, sorry. It's one of those days. Do I have
Mark,
a second?
Mark seconds.
All in favor? Joanne, aye?
Jack, aye.
Mark, aye.
Great.
Super. Sounds good. Okay. So that was the class done. What else have you got for us, Matt?
I guess just a point of clarification. So, it's part of our sampling program, and I kind of touched on this in the initial overview of the project detail, is to do some diversion sampling. And we had sort of originally planned on that happening when there were periods of active diversion. And so to date, the only diversion that we're aware of is, I think, the emergency diversion that was approved by the commission in September, I believe. And I don't know if that even actually ended up happening or not. I know it was approved. And then if anybody knows whether there have been diversions since to Silver Lake from either Monpont or elsewhere.
So we actually have DPW Commissioner Patrick Hill on the meeting today. So Pat, I'm going to allow you to speak on the spot. Hold on a second. Pat, are you there? Looks like you're muted. Pat, are you with us? Doesn't look like we're going to be able to get through at the moment. You've got contacts, I think, for Veolia down at the lake, right? Would they know?
Yeah, we've been in contact both with Pat and Mike at Veolia.
Okay.
So
So
I could just
they
pose the
could probably
question.
confirm.
Yeah, we just
Yeah.
haven't received any notification that anything's actually happened. So we're just not sure at this point. And it seems like this is a very unusual year weather-wise, and that may impact how the diversions occur or whether they occur or when they occur, which will also impact, whether we would be necessarily sampling for everything. So for example, if diversion started in January, it probably wouldn't make sense to sample for cyanotoxins at that time because we really wouldn't expect to see cyanobacteria blooms in January. I think we originally wrote the scope thinking that those diversions would happen in late fall or start happening in late fall when there could still be a chance, and then into spring perhaps. So we're just trying to get a sense of when the best timing for that sampling may be. And if it doesn't happen, then we have the opportunity to maybe reallocate some of that effort as well, which obviously the commission would need to consider.
Yeah, I think your best bet would be to reach out to Veolia or directly to Pat. And if you don't have his email address, I can get that to you. That way we know for sure what they're thinking on their end.
Okay, great. So I think that covers it for that agenda item. And I think that the next item on our little mini agenda here was just sort of discussing how the commission would want to handle outreach about the project going forward. So I think, as I mentioned, when we're going over the project detail, the original concept is we would have some sort of leaflet that was issued at, closer to the initiation of the work, to inform the public and maybe, help solicit some input. But a lot of that process has already happened. And I know there's been direct outreach by the commission to a lot of the stakeholders. So I guess our question is, is there anything else that's envisioned at this point, sort of, on this end of the project? And if not, what are we looking forward to towards the end of the project? I think we had a pretty tight schedule at the end of the project, really because, based on how the RFP was written, we had to kind of wrap things up quickly. But depending on what the commission wants to do next year, we are certainly amenable to adjusting the timing of any leaflet that would go out for public outreach purposes, sort of summarizing the key takeaways from the study. I think we originally had it planned for, I'll just check my project detail here. I think it was draft in late May and then, early June, and then a final leaflet in late June, with the actual, field work ending in April. So really that gives us 2 months to pull together the whole report, have the commission review it, and then also pull out the key highlights that we want to put into that leaflet, and then have the commission review and approve that to be released, which is very, very tight turnaround. Not that it couldn't happen, and we certainly would be more than willing to support you in making that happen. But if we don't need to do it that quickly, or we want to consider extending the study at all, then we probably just need to set up an alternate timeline on when that would make most sense to do. Kim, did you want to add some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess the way I'm thinking about this is, part of the comments that came back from DEP and Brockton, and I think Bernadette as well, identified the issue that we haven't really captured the primary growing season. I think when we started this, our intent was, but things got delayed a bit. And when we were able to get ESS on board and then get out into the field. And so for me, I think it's hard to have that discussion about the public engagement when we haven't really identified whether we intend to extend the sampling into beyond what we currently have planned. So Joanne, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, but for me, I think that if the goal is to develop a data set that really highlights the water quality issues that we see, on an annual basis, we haven't captured one of the most critical periods in what we have planned now. And I think that might leave a lot of questions open to the public.
I think when we first started talking about doing this project, we were always aware of the fact that we needed to figure out a way to try and get a full year in. And just because of the timing with the RFP and the way things went down, you kind of, as you've explained, Kim, missed that kind of chunk that's arguably the most important. So I would definitely be interested in seeing how we can get a full year in. I think it's a budget question. So we'd need to understand what the cost implications of that would be, and then have a discussion to determine whether we want to spend that money for that, or if there are other priorities that take a higher priority. But Jack, Mark, what do you guys think about that?
Go ahead, Jack.
Me first?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to go for the full year, and while we have demands in our budget, it seems to me we have a pretty decent budget to work off of. So I don't think we would be bumping aside anything else that we were trying to do in the next year by doing so. Unless there's something I don't know about. I know what I have in mind, and I don't
Mark,
think
what are your thoughts?
it's not a budget.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
I'm in line with Jack on it.
Okay.
I mean, I guess
Not,
to be more precise, I think we should be requesting a proposal to do the full year sampling, and with our, some confidence that we'll approve it.
Matt, would it be possible for you guys to get us the proposal for the extension in time for a December meeting? And then would that be soon enough for us to make a decision at that meeting?
From our perspective, that would be a completely acceptable timeline. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so let's do that. Let's consider a proposal at the December meeting. And then I think I'm with Kim on the public participation stuff. Once we make that decision, then the public participation stuff will kind of follow off the backside of that.
Okay. No, that's helpful, because I know those two things were linked, and
Mhm.
obviously there's a lot of technical questions on the field program end of things, and then the public outreach and input portion is tied into that and very important to take into consideration, and in some ways will be influenced by what we find. So yeah, we just wanted to make sure we were leaving enough time to do that justice. So and give you guys what you want. So
Yeah.
great.
Super. All right. Anything else, Matt, on your end?
I think we kind of covered those last two topics together there. So there's nothing else on my end, but obviously I'm happy to stick around and answer any other questions you may have.
Commissioners, do you have anything else for Matt or for Kim?
I just have one question. With the plant study, and I know it might be speculation, but is that what you expected to see? Did anything in there shock you? What is your opinion on that so far?
I guess I've seen enough lakes and ponds in southern New England that it doesn't shock me to see aquatic invasives anywhere, even in drinking water supplies, unfortunately. It is a little interesting to see those, 3 plant species there, given that there really is no public access to the lake. So if they are coming down from Tubbs Meadow Brook, that at least gives us an explanation potentially for how they got in. and maybe a way to, something to focus on as a way to keep any future invaders out. And if the if a decision is made to do something about those plants, it also gives us a way to try to keep them from coming back in the future. But given the bathymetry go ahead.
Sorry, I was just wondering, so, obviously the diversion happens, and I'm just wondering, when the lake gets full, is there any way that the diversion could backflow into Tubbs Meadow Brook to cause those species to basically, go upstream from a backfeed because it's, it gets so full?
Yeah, that could be a way that they got there too. Animals can also be involved in transport of some of these. So if there's any beaver activity or muskrats, I mean, they can carry fragments around. So it doesn't necessarily absolutely slam dunk mean that there's a one-way delivery of that plant material into the lake, but it does at least give us a plausible sense as to how the plants may have gotten into the lake, and a spot where we may want to focus efforts on preventing additional introductions.
And then
which
the
is
last
helpful.
question I have, so the last question I have in regard to the diversion, when you start sampling the diversion, would you be able to, are those things that would be present in the sampling, or is that at that point they're just too small to actually register in your sampling? If they're just like really immature plants or even cells for that matter.
Well, I think so. The way that we had intended to do the diversion sampling was to actually go to the sources and collect samples from there. I know the city of Brockton presented some options for actually sampling from the diversions themselves. But I think it is important to know what's coming from those sources. So it's not something that we had in our scope to map out in those other locations, but obviously if we're out there and we observe aquatic invasive plants, we're going to say something about it so that you would know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Do any of the attendees on the meeting have any questions or comments? We have Brad Chase. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could, just in my notes, I might have missed it, but so we have on the QUAP. So I have that Kim. So the motion I have is for Kim to review and comment on the QUAP, then submit to EPA and DIP for review once the comments are addressed. I think we then went to discuss the meeting date, which was voted on as January 25th. But I just wanted to make sure that was a motion and that it was seconded and that was the proper vote. Is that your recollection?
For the SAP or for the QUAP?
For the QUAP.
For the QUAP, I don't think there was a motion. I think we just agreed that
Okay.
Matt was going to send it to Kim. Kim was going to review it, and then hopefully the commission would get it in time for discussion at our January meeting, which we may move up in the month if the report is available sooner.
Great. Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Super. Okay, so we do have a comment and a question from Brad Chase. So DMF's Silver Lake habitat assessment during 2008-2009 did not detect any invasive plants. The question is whether it's recent invasion.
It certainly could be. I mean, I think it's widespread enough for at least two of those species that I would say they've been there for a while. They're established. The third species was probably more of a recent invasion. But that, 2008, 2009, it's more than a decade ago. So that would give them plenty of time to get established.
Super. And then Matt, I know that I think Pat Hill is back on Zoom. So Pat, I'm going to allow you to talk. There were some questions about diversions that Matt had.
Yep.
Hi, Pat, you there? Super.
Yep,
Hi, Pat.
I'm here.
Go ahead, Matt. Ask away.
Yeah, Pat, I guess we were just looking for clarification. I know that an emergency diversion had been requested because of the storms that we were having back in September. I think it was approved. And I was just wondering if that diversion actually did happen and how long it went for, and if there's have been any since.
So we're currently diverting now. The reason that they asked for the diversion, I mean, it was out of season, right? So we're only allowed to divert from October 1st to May 31st. That diversion did happen. I believe it was for approximately 7 or 8 days, but I can pull up the, I have to go back into my my list here to see. If you give me a minute, I might be able to pull it up right now. 1 second.
Yeah, if it's easier, I can just email you as well. And
Yeah, I mean, I can shoot, why don't you do that? Then I can shoot you all that information.
okay.
And what was it? So it did happen. It was for, I believe it was 8 days, but it might be 10 days. It was at 100%, which we don't typically do. We don't typically divert at 100%. We need the okay from DEP to do that. We're restricted to generally 50%. We don't even, on a regular basis, we go at about 45%, which gives us about 15 million gallons a day.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have anything for Matt or Kim? I know they both have meetings at 1 o'clock, so they're gonna have to jump off the call. Looks like we're all good. Thank you, Matt and Kim, so much for the work that you're doing and for your time today. So we look forward to next month when we'll continue moving forward.
Great.
Thanks
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
So the next 2 items on our agenda are the approval of minutes from Tuesday, September 28, 2021. Mark and Jack, have you guys had a chance to review those, and do you have any changes?
They're fine from my perspective.
Mine as well.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I have motion to approve the minutes.
Second,
Okay, so we've got, super, all in favor, Joanne, aye?
Jack, yes.
Mark, aye.
Super, thank you. Frank, are you ready for the finance report? Funds
Aye.
from DCR and invoice approval.
Yes, Chair. Just digging that out.
Mhm.
So I did forward the finance report to you all. Included a couple of payments, one for the ESS consulting for $21,783.01, and one for Kimberly Graff Associates, $2,625. There was interest in September and October. That leaves a October 31 balance of $502,071.90. And that'll be reflected in the minutes. I'll include that. We do have a number of invoices that we've received recently. So we believe we're on a 2-year schedule for domain registration. That allows us to use the domain for our website. For 2 years, it's $53.90. And also the use of the website and the Weebly tools for 2 years is $229.50 for that period. Those are both paid for by credit card by me, and those would be reimbursed back to me from the CPCWDC funds. We have 2 invoices for ESS, one for October 15th for $9,851.40. One for November 10th for $11,005.78. And we have an invoice for Tuttle Land Surveying. This is the final amount owed to them for work done over the last couple of years. That's $1,038 and no cents. You all received copies of those invoices, and If possible, if we could have a motion, that would be great, and to approve and to pay those.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second,
All in favor? Joanne, I.
Jack, yes?
Mark, aye.
Super.
Great, thank you
Thank you,
very
Frank.
much.
Jack and Mark, do you guys have any questions about the finance report or anything that Frank's talked about?
I do not.
No. All right, super. So the next item on the agenda is an update and discussion on the proposal to purchase the hydro dredge. Jack, I'm going to pass that over to you. I
Okay,
think.
yeah. Sure, yeah, thank you. Yeah, both Brad Chase and Pine Dubois have been very helpful in helping that move along. And we did get some comments from DMF on the memorandum of understanding. And I finally took a look at them and passed them on to everyone. And I think the comments are well made, and they did add something to the effect that there should be a charge to the users to cover some part of the cost. And I think that's a good idea, not just to cover the cost, but also to weed out people who really want to use it versus people who think it's a good idea, but it might waste our time and then not actually use it. So I would suggest that we agree to those changes. And then after that, I'm not quite sure how procedurally we'd handle that, whether we sign it and send it off to DMF or vice versa. But either way, I'd move that we do that.
And Jack, what about, so if we do charge users, is DMF proposing to be the administrator of that, or is that something the commission would have to take on?
I
And
think
do we figure out this?
we haven't figured it out, but I'm thinking, I mean, I'm thinking we should take that on. I don't think DMF wants to handle that. And Frank and the county has proved to be very able administrators, so I have no issues with us with additional cost having the county handle it. Cost of the county is going to need. In fact, the fee would partly reimburse us for the county services and administering it.
Yeah, we do that with our normal dredge now, Chair. And there'd be no additional fees for that. We have a common stock invoice. We just would have to work with Brad on when the equipment was actually on site, and then we could just issue invoices. We have a rental agreement that we could also use. I think I've forwarded to the commissioners before, just to get the named parties, make sure the insurance is properly, the project is covered under the town's insurance. So we do all that for our dredge, and we could do that for our CPCWDC too.
Okay. Go ahead, Jack.
The other thing is that the users would be responsible for the permits that they need to use the equipment. It would not be through us or the county or DMF.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the next step is I myself haven't had a chance to review the version that you sent through. Let me see. So the last version of a MOU I have is, I think, November 16th. Is that reflective of those changes that you just talked about?
I believe it is, yeah. And the version actually predates November 16th. I think that's the email date from me to you.
Okay, yeah, that is the date on the email, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mark, have you had a chance to review that? Do you feel comfortable voting on that today, or do we want to put that on the December meeting?
I did review it previously, but if there's no changes, I'm okay voting on it.
Okay. Sounds good to me too. So do I have a motion to approve the MOU for the hydro dredge with DMF?
So moved with the Frank, do we need to specifically move to sign it as a commission or authorize you to sign it?
I would, seeing that we're not meeting in person, authorize me to sign it for the commissioners. You can cover that in your motion.
Okay, so let's modify the motion accordingly. We approve it and we authorize Frank Basler of the Plymouth County to sign on our behalf.
Do I have a
I
second?
second that.
All in favor? Joanne, yes?
Jack, yes?
Mark, aye.
Super. So the next step after that is once we get it all signed by both parties, that would be, I guess, the development of an RFP. But I know we had talked about in the past, we might not need an RFP because it was a single
Source?
I forget what you call, yeah, single source.
Yeah, that's what I recall, is that this is something that's not easily bid out because there's so few suppliers of it.
I'll
Mhm.
start, we will need an RFP for that because you're a state agency, a commission. So we're not exempt from 30B. So I will start working on it. Things are a little challenging right now. I have a couple of the big RFPs going on right now. So that probably would be January that I could write it for and have it ready for you at the January. I'll get the drafts out mid-January for you to approve at the end of January meeting.
That's fine. That makes, I mean, there's no need to be in a hurry because we're unlikely to be able to use the equipment until well into 2022.
Yeah, perfect. So just for folks on the call who might not be familiar with what this is all about, so the commission for a while now has been pursuing a partnership with DMF for the commission to purchase a hydro dredge to be used in the Central Plymouth County Water District area. The idea being that it can help with restoration projects and a whole bunch of other stuff in the region. So if anybody wants further information about that, they can reach out to the commission or directly to any one of us, including Frank, and we can give you more information about that, including if your community is interested in using it for something.
I also will work with Brad and Pine. I know they each had discussed the specific equipment that they thought was necessary on the dredge. So that'll be included in the draft for the commissioners to approve.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank. Okay, anything else on that? All right, so the next item on the agenda is an update on Brockton water supply agreements. So I've been working with Gregory, Matthew, and Megan Bridges, who are lawyers for the city of Brockton. And they have sent through both a summary of the agreements, and after emailing them this morning, I actually do have the agreements themselves for the Abington Gables agreement, the Avon, TL Edwards, and Hanson. So I will forward those agreements to the commissioners so that they can review those. The agreements that this community, that Brockton has with Pembroke, Whitman, and West Bridgewater are not in writing. So I'm going to ask for the city to just summarize what that informal agreement entails, or at least how much it's been over the past couple of years. So now that we have that information, I think that will clarify a lot of the discussions that we've had in the past about who's getting water for Brockton, how much, until when. We might want to talk about this in more detail in the future. I myself haven't had a chance to review the agreements yet either. So Mark and Jack, I think maybe do we want to put this on the agenda for our next meeting and discuss them? Or do we just want to, now that we have them, just sit on it for a little while.
I think we should put them on the agenda for discussion at our next meeting.
Sounds good. So let's do that. I think Frank, are you able to see the attendees? Because I can't actually see the list of attendees for some reason anymore.
Yes, we
Is
have,
Mark still on? Or
Mark,
did we lose Mark?
I don't
Uh,
see Mark.
he's
Oh,
actually-
I do see his number, but he's not on in the.
yeah,
the-
okay, I just brought him back.
He's just back.
He wasn't on as a panelist, he was on as a attendee.
Yeah, are you back,
All right,
Mark?
sorry, I dropped off and now you have
Ah.
unmuted me, so I am back. I apologize. I can't unmute myself until you allow it.
No problem. So we were just saying, Mark, that on the December agenda, so I received a summary of the water agreements that Brockton has with other communities. And then I followed up this morning and they've sent me through the actual agreements for 3 of the towns. So I'll forward those to you and Jack. And then we're going to put that on an agenda for December to talk about those agreements.
Oh, that'll be great.
Super. Okay, anything else on that? No? Okay, super. So the next item is an update on my discussion with DPW Director Pat Hill, who is, Frank, I don't know, is Pat still on with us as well? I don't know why I can't see anybody.
Yes, he
Yes,
is.
yeah.
He
Okay,
is.
cool. So Pat and I had a long discussion and we talked in particular about the next item on the agenda, Halifax's request for us to work with the town and the city of Brockton on some kind of written process or procedure for managing high water levels at Monpont Pond. And we talked a little bit about some of the issues that the commission's been talking about with getting more flow down the Jones River and looking at supply options for the region as well as for the city of Brockton. So I think the main takeaway from that conversation was that Brockton is more than willing to work with us on Halifax's request and trying to get something on paper so that when there's a change in town administrators or select boards in Halifax or commissioners, there'll be something written to kind of follow when that situation arises. So I think commissioners, you guys both, I think, saw that request come through from Halifax. Is that right?
Mhm.
Super. And Pat, I'm going to unmute you here again. Oh, actually, I can't because I can't see you. Frank, would you unmute
I got
Pat,
it.
please?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, there you are,
Super.
Patrick.
Hi,
I'm
Pat.
here. Hi.
Great. So Pat, jump in if I've got this wrong, but I think what we discussed was that you wait for direction from DMF in order to divert during periods where you're technically not allowed to. And DMF takes action after the town formally requests it.
It's DEP,
Is
not
that-
DMF.
Oh, sorry, God, DEP, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty straightforward. It would be that the town of Halifax would be the one that would have to determine when a diversion is necessary. They would then have to alert both DEP and the commission with that formal request. DEP would have to approve it and the commission would also have to approve it. And then Brockton would in turn follow that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
would say that's correct. I'm not 100% sure what the commission's role in that whole thing would be. I know we go through that process, but if Halifax is requesting something for flood control and they put a request into DEP and DEP approves it, is that something that has to go to the district commission here, or is that something that we would do? We wouldn't do anything unless we get direction from DEP anyway. So if that's been the process all along, I guess then, yeah.
So I think, and Jack, jump in here, because I'm pretty sure that in the Act of 64, the commission is written in as being the deciding body for diversion outside of the permitted
Yes,
timeline.
we're the executive authority over district essentially, and that's been reaffirmed through, at least through the legal department of the state legislature. So yeah, in the past, in the early days of the commission, all these diversions were, we would hold an emergency meeting by telephone to authorize a diversion in these circumstances. The DP is really only playing an advisory role in that. They aren't really giving permission.
So operationally, from the city's point of view, it sounds like you guys want that approval from DEP before you act. But from our point of view, it's actually the commission, not the deciding body on whether or not those diversions can happen.
Well, I would only say that the way the diversion structure is in the acts, that it does not give us the ability, regardless, to divert if the lake is full. And it does not give us the authority, or anyone really the authority, other than for flood prevention, to divert outside of the season. So if Brockton is going to be doing something outside of diversion season, or when the lake is full, I'm going to want, somebody to make that determination. Brockton is not going to make that determination because we'd be in violation of the law.
You're correct. Yeah, the law puts that decision in the commission's hands in those circumstances.
I don't. So without having the law in front of me, and I'm not questioning that, I would rather kind of read through that a little bit before I would commit to that. But
well, sure, but the commission had been very accommodating in the early years when this was requested with some frequency. So, as a practical matter, it's a matter of getting a phone call to Joanne or whoever the chair is, and then have the chair round up a quick emergency meeting of the commission by phone. It usually was done within 24 hours of Brockton or Halifax making the request. So.
And my understanding of the history and the act, and again, I could always be wrong, was that part of the reason that this commission exists in the first place is for that very purpose.
Right. Yeah. It's to balance the needs of the Brockton water system, and if it expanded to other towns with the need to other users to use the water bodies that serve as reservoirs. And this is one of them. So
yeah. And Pat, I can send you a link to the acts that are on our website as well too, if you want to take a look at those.
yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I'll do
Thank
that
you.
after the meeting today.
Okay.
Super.
Somewhere
So
in
the
our,
next steps.
somewhere in our files, there is the determination made by somebody. I think it was the legislature's legal department about the status of the commission relative to this too. It clarified that, as I recall, that it was not that essentially we're a political decision-making authority and DEP is an advisory. DEP and DPH are advisory to us.
Was that back in 2015 in an email, Jack?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I think I've got that as well too. It looks like Chief Legal Counsel for the Mass House of Representatives.
Yeah, that's the one. Yep.
Clarified some stuff. Yep. So I'll forward that to Pat too as well, so he's got it, and I'll copy you guys in, so you've got it handy also. So it sounds like the next steps, because I don't think, especially with changes that happen at the town level, I don't think that Halifax understands the process. And for future, it would be good to get this down on paper as well when commissioners change and things like that. So would the best way forward, I think, would be for the commission probably to have a first go at putting some of this down on paper. And then we'll offline run that through Brockton, Halifax, and the DEP and kind of get a draft together. And then bring it up at a future meeting of the commission. Pat, does that sound okay to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm kind of full up for the next couple months, so I probably wouldn't be able to get to it until February, unless there's another commissioner that wants to kind of work on that. Otherwise, it will have to be February. Yeah, you guys okay with February? So we'll put that on the February agenda.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll also, I'll send an email to the town and copy everybody in, just to let them know that this is something that we've discussed and we'll be working on and we'll be in touch with after the new year.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Pat. Anything else on that from anybody? That was pretty easy, easy peasy. Appreciate you joining the meeting, Pat. Thank you.
No problem.
I think that is all we've got, unless there's any other business from anyone.
I did want to suggest, go back to my usual theme and suggest something that would be on our agenda, probably going through next year. We really need to be pushing hard on what the purpose of the commission is, and looking forward to a future where we're actually addressing some of the issues that we're talking about all the time. I guess I can put it in context. There's a big infrastructure bill that got passed recently, and regardless of the politics of it, it would be good for the whole district if we were ready with a plan to spend money on something, because we are infrastructure. So should funds become available to, say, do something to help Brockton maintain the water system, to address some of the ongoing issues with the reservoirs and that sort of thing, we really ought to be putting together a report that outlines what we can do, so that when the funds become available, we have the information in place, so we're in line to get those funds. For example, short term, what would happen if we suddenly had enough funds available to run the desalination plant at its full capacity for the whole year and reduce the demand on Silver Lake? That would be a great benefit to our system. And I suspect to get those funds, we have to have reports, goals, plans in place to justify us getting those funds. So that's my request. The next agenda.
Are you talking about the ARPA money that's gone to the county and the municipality?
I don't know which money. I'm referring to the recent federal package, the $1.2 trillion. I mean, there's many sources of money, but usually to get the money, you have to have a plan in place, and you have to compete with other entities that might want that money for that purpose. And it seems to me that it would serve the interests of the commission in its member communities for us to be pushing that aspect of our work, so that when funds become available, we have an avenue to steer them to things that will benefit the water system.
Yeah, I think the challenge is going to be, so the ARPA money that's come out now has gone to, as Frank can tell us more about, it's gone to the county and it's been allocated to the municipalities. So the county, apart from allocating to the municipalities and keeping a chunk for administration and whatnot, there's no regional, there's no way to regionally kind of collaborate on use of those funds. With the ARPA money that's going to communities directly, those communities are deciding themselves how to spend that. So I know, for example, in Brockton, there has been a survey that has been, I believe is still open, asking residents how they'd like to see some of those funds spent. I know some of it's being spent on, I think, some of our parks. So I don't know how much control, if any at all, we'd have on any of that. The new legislation that you're talking about, I don't know. I know that some of the ARPA funds as well are coming through to the state, and the state is considering putting them out as grants competitively. So certainly if there are competitive grant opportunities that get released in the future, I know work, we haven't heard of any yet.
Okay, may I just jump in? Rather than get into the weeds of it now, I'm simply suggesting we put this on the agenda for the commission to start looking at. I think we don't see very often, and I get this from some DEP people occasionally, is that we're the politicians. We're supposed to be the leaders in getting these things dealt with, and we need to take that role. and start putting together a plan so that I don't think anybody here thinks that the Brockton water system as it stands today is going to be the same 50 years from now. It needs a serious investment to make it work into the future. And we need to start putting the plans together for that so that we know where we're going and other people see it. And we start being ready for when those funds get rolled out. It's political too. I mean, we have to get our state and federal legislatures on board with it. We have a need for these funds and start getting in line.
Well, this is, yeah. So maybe it's
Jack,
time to have another, Mark.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I agree with you, Jack, but I believe the first step of that was the water quality study. So I think, we definitely have to be proactive. And I think that, getting the study funded was the first step to that. But, we should for sure. So
yeah, well, that was
I
on
think
that was on an agenda
gonna be there.
3 years ago. I'm talking about next year's agenda for the next studies. So,
yeah,
that's it.
Well, we have a bit of a capacity issue as well, too, right? So that's always a challenge.
I'm sorry, we have a what issue?
A bit of a capacity issue. Volunteers, we've had this conversation about how to move stuff forward at speed that's fast enough, given those constraints. So, but maybe it's time to have, because part of what we're talking about here is a decision for PCW Commissioner Hill to make with his department, but it's also the mayor of Brockton and city councilors that heavily factor into that. So maybe it's time we have another commission meeting where we invite the mayor and other interested elected officials from Brockton to talk about opportunities to collaborate around infrastructure needs.
Yeah, we could certainly do that, but
So should we put the?
I think I can't speak for the mayor or the Brockton officials, but I would suggest that they are also looking for us to take some leadership on this. It's not easy for the city of Brockton on its own to get these funds. If we make it a regional issue through our commission, suddenly we're in a much better position to get a big chunk of money to get something done.
If I could, Chair, both Pine Dubois and Patrick Hill have raised their hands. I'm not sure whether you want to allow or if it's the appropriate time, but I know you couldn't see that participant board.
I can't see any of that.
Back
Thank you,
and
Frank.
I've got a hard stop in a few minutes, and I just want to circle back and say, I'm simply looking to put this on the agenda and not decide it today. So for what it's worth, it's something that's been, you've heard me rant about it before, and I'm not letting go of it. We need to take a leadership role, and we can do it if we decide to do it and we get enough help with whether through consultants or other agencies. We've done pretty well so far this year, I think. So I'm emboldened.
Let's hear from DW Commissioner Hill. Frank, if you could unmute him, please.
Yep. Go ahead, Patrick.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see the unmute button there. No, I just wanted to say that I mean, I think you and Jack are talking about two totally different things. You're talking about ARPA funds. Jack's talking about the infrastructure bill. The state's due to receive, I think, $8 to $10 billion in infrastructure money from the infrastructure bill. A lot of that kind of revolves around water and wastewater related projects. So we've already begun some work on that. On coming up with solutions that are going to better serve everybody, I think so. I just wanted to kind of clear the air on that.
Thank you. I'll open up Pine's mic. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Yeah.
You're all set, Pine. You're muted right now.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
So thanks, Jack, for bringing that up. I did comment when the legislature was hearing on the ARPA money, and it was all about ideas to make the Brockton water supply more resilient and less damaging to the area resources. I would love it if you would have such a thing. And I think this is something that the commission could even ask the advisory board to help on. It's 7 communities, you know, if we all pitched in together and did something that we could help Brockton with and solve this problem, because honestly, we're running out of time. And I'm doing everything I can to stay out of court, but I am not going to put up with a missed opportunity like this. You know, Brockton can do so much to take the pollution out of the lake, to take the flooding out of Monpont Pond, to take, you know, to bring back the fisheries and everything. It really needs to happen. And I'm all with Jack on this. I wish you'd have a special meeting on it. I wish that, you know, you would invite volunteers to help you as you need, and get the legislators that are the respective legislators in as well, because I think that just dividing all that money up and into little fiefdoms is a waste of an opportunity. And I think that we owe it, you know, after 120 years, we owe it to the regional resources to do something about it. And this is the chance. Thank you.
So why don't we, on the agenda for December, discussion about next steps for action projects. Does that cover the request, Jeff? Or would you like to word it differently?
I'm sorry, we're gonna have to get you a new auto tune, Joanne. You keep breaking up.
Oh, no. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Right now I can, yeah.
Okay. So, so for the agenda on December, we can add next steps on projects for the commission, or would you like that worded differently?
That sounds fine. It's gonna be a work in progress. That sounds perfect.
Sounds good. All right. Anybody else have any other business? No? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
And the second? All in favor?
Second.
Joanne, yes?
Jack, yes?
Mark, yes.
Great. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining the meeting today. So our next meeting is going to be, let me just make sure I get this right, the December 28th at 12 noon via Zoom.
Exactly. Perfect.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Take care. Merry Christmas.